Welcome to All Things Korean. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to distinguish the differences between the consonants 기역, 키읔, and 쌍기역. At a first glance, you might notice that these consonants look very similar in shape, and that's the way Hangul was created. Similar shape refers to a common place of articulation. In this case, these three consonants are what is called a velar stop. A velar stop is a consonant that is pronounced when the back of your tongue touches the soft palate and blocks the airflow. The shape of the consonant is also a hint that indicates that it's a velar stop. Similar velar stops in the English language are the G in girl and the K in kite. I say similar and not the same because Korean velar stops are not quite the same as the American English velar stops. So looking at these three similar velar stops, 기역 is the most basic neutral form. You add one dash and it becomes 키읔, which is an aspirated form. Or you can double it and it becomes 쌍기역, which is a tensed form. I'm going to explain what each of that means, but first let's take a look at the basic 기역. For practical purposes throughout this video, I'm going to add the vowel a and call them ka, and ga. So let's look at ka and compare them to the English consonants G and K. So before we look at the Korean pronunciation, I want to take a look at G and K and what characteristics distinguish these two. There are two key features that help us tell apart G and K. One is voicing and the other is aspiration. Voicing refers to the vibration of your vocal cords when a word or a letter is pronounced. Let's take a look at G and K. When you say ga in English, you can feel that there is a vibration in your vocal cord. You can put a hand over here and compare ga and ka. When you say ga, the vibration in your vocal cords, it starts from the get-go. But when you say ka, you'll feel that the vibration comes a bit later on. That's because G is a voiced consonant, whereas K is not. It's an unvoiced consonant. The second feature we're going to look at is aspiration. And aspiration refers to a strong burst of air that comes out of your mouth when the sound is articulated. In this case, G is an unaspirated consonant, whereas K is aspirated. You can tell the difference by putting a hand in front of your mouth and say ga and ka. When you say ka, you're going to notice that there is a burst of air coming out. So these are the two major ways in which G and K differ. Now, where does the Korean ka come in? When you first learn Korean, a lot of Korean teachers are going to say that the pronunciation for ka is somewhere in between G and K. And that might be confusing, but it's actually not wrong, and I'm going to break it down for you and tell you why. The thing about ka is that it shares some traits with both G and K, but at the same time it doesn't. Let's compare ka to the English letter G. What's common between these two consonants is that compared to K, they are not aspirated. So while ka has that strong burst of air, ga in English or ka in Korean both don't have that strong level of aspiration. How ka is different from ga, however, is that ga is a voiced consonant while the Korean ka is unvoiced. So when you say ka in Korean, there is no vibration of the vocal cords. Now let's compare ka with the English ka. The similar characteristic is that both consonants are unvoiced. When you say ka or when you say ka, you don't feel that vibration in your vocal cords. However, the big difference between the Korean ka and the English ka is the level of aspiration. So ka is not completely unaspirated, but compared to ka, there is a very, very low level of aspiration. So what you can do to practice is put a tissue or your hand in front of your mouth and compare the levels of aspiration. Ka will have very small aspiration, whereas ka, you will feel a strong burst of aspiration. So you can think of it like a Venn diagram. Ka is similar to G in that it's not aspirated, but different because G is voiced, whereas ka is unvoiced. Ka and ka are similar in that they are both unvoiced, but different in the levels of aspiration. That is why we say that ka is in between G and K. Now this applies to when the kiok or ka comes at the beginning of a word. When it's in between two vowels, it does tend to have a voice property, and that's when it is romanized as a G and pretty accurate in that sense. But when it comes at the beginning of a word, it becomes this ka, and it can be difficult to grasp at first because it's a sound that does not exist in the English language, but with time and practice, I'm sure that you will be able to get it right. So ka is a very neutral consonant. It's not voiced, it's not aspirated. There is minimal friction between the back of your tongue and the soft palate. Moving on to ka, which is ka with a little dash. Ka is pretty much the same as the English ka, ka. It's a strong aspirated velar stop. So that should be easier for most people. Ka. Now we're going to look at ga, which is the double consonant. You might be thinking that double consonant is a very weird concept, that it doesn't exist in the English language, but you might be surprised to find that there are actually instances where this sound exists in English. But first, let's explain how the sound is supposed to work. When we say that ga is a tensed consonant, it means that right before it's pronounced, the insides of your mouth are completely tensed. You hold the muscles in your mouth before you say the word. And this might be difficult to understand, but I'm going to show you an example. Let's look at the English word hiccup. So when you have the word hiccup, you can divide it into two syllables. One is hic and one is cup. Let's try saying the first syllable, hic. And when we say the word hiccup, we don't say hiccup. Although we do perceive it as a K sound, you'll notice that when you say the word hiccup, you don't aspirate it. If you break it down and you say hic, you'll notice that the insides of your mouth are tensed before you say the rest of the word, which is cup. You say hic, hic. You'll see how it kind of locks there, and that is the tensed state that we are talking about when we are discussing ga. So hiccup is actually a double consonant. If you spell that out in Korean, it would include the 쌍기역. It would be hiccup. Another thing to note is that the 쌍기역 or ga is not aspirated because it's all tensed up. It's completely blocking the airflow from the beginning, so there is no room for any air to get out. I think the word hiccup is a really good reminder in case you ever feel confused about what the sound is actually like. Another similar example would be Nicki Minaj. You don't say Nicki Minaj, we say Nicki, ki. And the sound is also the same as the Korean 쌍기역. It's ki Minaj, Nicki. This double consonant sound also exists in other languages. And a lot of the times they are romanized as the English letter K, but they take on a 쌍기역 double consonant sound. Let's look at examples in Spanish and Italian. The word casa, which means house in both Spanish and Italian, are not as aspirated as the K's in American English. We don't say casa, it's more of a casa. Another example that I found is the Indian dish, tikka masala, and that is also a double K. So when you try to spell it out using all three of the velar consonants that we learned today, you're going to realize that the double consonant sounds the most natural. Let's try tikka masala, tikka masala, and tikka masala. You'll notice that the double consonant sounds the most natural because it's a sound that does exist in many other languages, including English. So to wrap things up, ka, which can be romanized as either G or a K, is a sound that is very neutral. There is no voicing, there is minimal aspiration. Ka, with an extra dash, means that the sound is aspirated and is romanized as a K. And ka, which is the double consonant, can be romanized as either a KK or a GG, and is tensed, which means the insides of your mouth are tense before you pronounce it. And the example you can think of when you practice is hiccup and Nicki Minaj. I hope you found this video helpful and useful. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more videos on Korean language and culture. I'll see you in the next one. 다음 영상에서 만나요.